right, everybody, so we're here to talk about maximizing recruiter impact and thinking outside the ATS. And we believe that the mission of a Box's recruiting team, their attitude towards tech, and willingness to engage in new ways of thinking really makes them an excellent partner for Eightfold, but not just that, it represents an excellent model for the recruiting team as a whole. So we're really excited to be having this chat with them today so that they can share their story and approach with you all. So let's dive right in, shall we?
Thank you.
I'm Lauren Hartsfield.
I'm Marina Gu.
And then Lucy and Byrne. So before purchasing EF, or Eightfold, how did recruiting work at Box, and what did the org and tech stack look like for you all?
Yeah, we had our career site hosted with a vendor that we increasingly didn't like, and we were also kind of in a process of cleaning up our tech stack, right, and really defining the metrics. We had an operations function, but that team was not really looking at, adoption in our tools and driving the right metrics. So nobody had looked at that tech stack in a while. So we were in the middle of that evaluation process, and yeah, I think now we're in a better place with our metrics, with the tools that we use, making sure that our teams are using the tools that we have at their disposals and maximizing that adoption.
So you're talking about metrics and how you're defining success. How were you doing that at that time?
It was really messy. I remember when I first joined, Lucy, you probably remember this, but we had our ATS, we were in Greenhouse, but recruiters, every Friday afternoon, they would go to a Excel spreadsheet, and then they would update the status of their recs, right? And then that was the report that got sent out that was used to create dashboards and updates to leadership, right? So it was. And when I got there, the first question was like, first, what are we doing? Like, why do we have an ATS if you're asking people to then reflect the same things manually, right? And therefore our metrics were not great. I mean, they were always, not accurate, and there were always like problems. But yeah, now we're tracking like the basic things: offer acceptance rate, time to hire, time to fill, recruiter utilization. Now we're getting even more granular: time to offer, time to accept. Funnel dynamics, funnel analytics, a lot of all of the above.
Full spectrum.
Yeah, the full spectrum. Yeah.
So fast forward to about a year ago, what prompted you to start looking for something, a new vendor to add to your tech stack?
Yeah, this was interesting, and Bernardo mentioned it, but we were actually looking at a career site vendor and looking to replace the one we had. And quite honestly, we were so underutilizing the platform. We were with that particular vendor. We had the CRM and we had the career site, but we had 1 out of 50 users actually utilizing the CRM, which was really sad and unfortunate because I think the adoption really failed at the beginning of it all. But it was inherited, and so we really had to evaluate and look at what are we going to do with that now, right? So we had actually done, a full scope and looked at, all of the tools that we were utilizing. And Box, at the time and even now, we've been on this path to profitable growth. And I think that was important for us to say, this is our time to evaluate our tech stack holistically. And to be really intentional about it, because now it was Bernardo and myself and our team, and we had the chance to look at, how were we utilizing every single tool? We weren't doing that, I think, at the get-go. And so this was really our time to evaluate and say, this is where we can look at tools like Eightfold and say, are we going to proceed and move forward with that, right? We had to say no to some to say yes to others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So while you were uncovering those needs and looking at your tech stack, how did you identify what the needs you needed to address were?
Yeah, of course, we went in and we started following the recruiter. Back then, we had a sourcing function, following their workflow, right? Our coordinators, our sourcers, our recruiters, our recruiting managers, following everyone in their day and how they use the tools. And we uncovered things, for example, like candidate rediscovery was a big need. Right, we have been on Greenhouse for a while. Like Lucy said, we weren't really using the CRM, so that wasn't that was a non-starter when it came to rediscovery. And
Yeah, tell us about this 800,000.
so when we started looking at our greenhouse, this is a number that is staring at you in the face, right? It's always there when you look at your candidate pool in greenhouse, but we had 800,000 candidate applications that recruiters just couldn't search, right? It was really hard to search in the ATS. So, nobody told us like that, hey, I need a better ability to search candidates, but we saw their pain. When we follow them in the workflow, we saw how it's like, looking for a past applicant, trying to match past applicants to current opportunities was really, really hard to do, right?
Really underscores the importance of user research early on in the process.
Absolutely, absolutely, and really looking critically at the tools that you have, right? Not because it's there, it means that it should be there. Yeah.
So once you have those needs that you've identified that you need to solve, that's when the search really starts, right? So tell us about who you looked at and how you came to know Eightfold.
Yeah, we had this trifecta after that period of research, right? It was the career site we were really looking for, it was candidate rediscovery, and then really, I think the last one being the AI piece, which was really exciting for us. But it didn't start that way. I mean, we evaluated our existing partnerships. For example, a current partner of ours, GEM, they weren't at the time ready with some functionalities, but we also explored external tools that we had never heard of, like at the time it was Symphony Talent, it was Seek Out, Hire Easy, just a handful of different tools, and not necessarily an apples to apples comparison. I think we were looking at what is it that our team is going to need, and so we looked at all of them for various reasons, but an interesting part was we were introduced to Eightfold by a couple of talent leaders, actually. It was recommended to us to take a look at Eightfold, and they said, check out this interesting platform that they have going on, and we were like, oh, okay, what's interesting about it? And they're like, AI, everyone's talking about ChatGPT, and it's crazy how fast that piece of technology has really transformed industries, and I think we were intrigued, to say the least, and I think that was really exciting. And so, to solve for this potential trifecta, we were like, let's take a look at Eightfold.
And so, circling back to that decision, how did you come to decide that Eightfold was the right tool? So you heard about it, you learned about it, you think, okay, maybe we need to pay more attention to AI, but how did you come to that decision?
Yeah, I mean, and Bernard can probably speak to this, but I think, after evaluating, we were looking at how well we could get the support, right? We were missing a certain level of support from our partners at the time that they couldn't deliver on. And that was really important for us. But it was also the fact that we wanted something that could enhance our sourcing. It could enhance recruiter productivity. And that was like the sticker for it. And I think, that was one thing that we really wanted to look for.
Yeah, and again, the first thing we had to get out of the way was, does Eightfold meet the needs of our career site, right? And it's not only the career site, but of our employment branding strategy as a whole, right? And when we got that out of the way, then we could really focus on selling internally this concept of AI, which, again, Lucy, right now it's a buzzword, everyone talks about it, but when we started this process, we actually introduced the concept of AI to the HR team at Box, right? Nobody was talking about it, not in an HR context.
And what I love about the Box team is how you have thought about your career site as a gate for potential for candidates, not just, do you have a job, can I find it, but how do we make this a place of discovery?
Yeah, absolutely.
So with that in mind, once you decided that Eightfold was that tool of choice, was going to meet your needs on the career site and beyond, how do you go about making the case internally?
Yeah, it's interesting. Box has built out, I would say, a pretty robust process. We call this particular group of folks in senior leadership our investment committee. And so regardless of HR or different teams, everyone who has a potential platform that they'd like to purchase or they'd like to explore, they take it up with the investment committee. And so we really had to, with these folks, look at what was going to be the reason and rhyme as to why we would want to purchase such a tool and platform. And what about talent intelligence, right? They're going to ask us questions. They, on the other side, are not HR professionals. They're not recruiters themselves. So how do we sell this piece to them? And the first thing was really building out the return on investment. What could that potentially look like for us? So, looking at really a couple of things: recruiter gains in productivity. How is that going to show up? And then, are we going to reduce time to hire? That was really the two biggest things. And cost to hire is another factor that I think our finance teams really look at deeply, right? So those are all the connecting pieces that really made us push for a case like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And now with the market correction that happened and affected your business, how did that change your thinking about what that case should look like and what the priorities and success metrics should be?
Yeah, that has been really challenging, because when we got this approved by an investment committee, we made some commitments, right? We said we're going to recover the investment, we're going to see that ROI in so many months or whatever, and then the market changed. So now we can't even compare current hiring activity to previous hiring activity, because it's just so different, right? So instead, what we're trying to focus is the team using it, adoption, right? Pipelining. And Lucy, you can talk more about this, like talent communities and leveraging really that part of nurturing, engaging talent. And then making sure that we're training this new AI. It's for us, it's new, right? So we've introduced this concept of training a model, right, to our teams, to our recruiters, to our hiring managers, and explaining the value there. And it's all about agility, right? We want our recruiters to be more agile in this new environment. If you're not agile, you're not going to survive, right? And recruiters have a lot more of things coming at them, right? Like automation, large language models. All this is coming at the recruiter, and I think focusing on agility has been really key to really measure success.
Makes sense. And one thing I love is that the Box team has focused on calibration complete. What has unlocked that success for calibration? That can be a sticky point across our customers.
Yeah, calibration was one of the first things we looked at, because we said, if our recruiters don't get calibration right from the get-go, I don't think anything else will flow after that. And so in implementation, and even well before then, I think the Eightfold team did a great job of saying, hey, if we get calibration right, look at the calibration assistant, look at how it works and operates. And we actually spent so much time looking at it. And so we spent a ton of time doing the training up on it, but also making sure that the teams are doing it week over week, right? We are now pretty granularly tracking week over week. What does calibration look like for all of our positions? And seeing why something may not be calibrated, how can we assist, right? I think that's really important for our recruiters to continue to look at, because that's really the partnership that they have with their business is, hey, if I'm going to my business partner and I need to look at calibration, is it aligned to what they want? And are we going to yield the results of a true hire at the end of it? So
makes sense.
Something more on calibrations, if I may. Anyone here familiar with the Box product? Like we have this thing called Box Notes, which is part of our Box suite, right? And we use it a lot internally. It's like where we document meetings, where we go and we do all sorts of things in Box Notes. Box Notes was being used as a calibration tool, right? That's where hiring managers and recruiters would go, run intake meetings, document everything in Box. So us launching calibration in Eightfold meant telling our team not to use our own product, right? But that was very important to making Eightfold work, right? Otherwise, if we would have resisted doing that, it's like, no, how are we going to tell our team not to use our own product, right? Like that sounds great. But in this case, that's what it took, right? And I think the team is doing it now, right?
Yeah.
And what's been the overall reception from the user audience?
Yeah, they were, from the get-go, we really wanted to hype them up and get really excited about a new tool, obviously, given the huge investment, but super excited overall. I think we had a ton of users in the get-go of exploring the tool a little bit further. Building our power users has been really important for us, and so they've filled roles that have been really challenging. And I'm talking about, for us, it's security folks in countries that, typically are very hard to find talent for. So the reception has been really, really good, and I think the excitement is still there because they're seeing yield from using the tool.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful dovetail into what are some of the results you've seen in the last 6 months since you've gone live.
Yeah, so 95% of our team on a weekly basis is utilizing the Eightfold tool, which for me, that like warms my heart. I'm like, yes, you know, all the time and the investment we've spent to get here, we're seeing our teams utilize it pretty effectively.
So having gone through this process and reflecting back on it, what would be your guidance to the audience here on maximizing recruiting impact and efficiency, and generally being best in class?
Yeah, I think, and I think that's in the next slide. Yeah, just to touch on the latest numbers, we also were able to measure, we reduced our time to hire by 16%, right? So that's a huge thing. Still early days for us, but we're super happy to be in that position and sell that internally, tell that story internally. It's like, look, we deployed this tool, and now we're hiring people faster. When it comes to learnings and takeaways, again, I said at the beginning, if you have an opportunity, and right now it's a great opportunity to do this because I would imagine there's not a lot of hiring going on. But now is it's a good moment to look at your tech stack, to look at it critically. And sometimes it means telling your team to not use, you know, the tools that they're used to using, but take that opportunity to review, ask the hard questions, measure usage, adoption, ROI, right? That's
drilling into those processes internally.
Absolutely, yeah. And then think about the future when you're building your tech stack. Again, for us, AI back then, we saw that was the future, and we wanted to future-proof our. So glad we did that because now we look like so smart. but back then it was not really where we started the process, right? User research, Lucy, you spent a lot of time doing this, right? And following our teams in their day-to-day and really looking at what their pain points are. But it's also translating. They never told us, hey, I'd like to have a better tool for candidate rediscovery. They didn't tell us that, right? We just saw their pain when they were searching in the ATS and how cumbersome it was. So we translated that into a requirement. So doing that is very important now. And then AI, yeah, I said it. AI is coming at recruiters, and recruiters right now, they're asking themselves, how is my job going to change with AI, right? And what I tell everyone always is, I don't think AI is going to replace the role of the recruiter. If anything, it's going to make you 30% more productive. It's going to make you 30% a better recruiter than what you're today. So that's how we are framing it internally in terms of explaining why are we using these tools and these models.
And I think last learning for us is, involve other teams early outside of the recruiting team. For us, I think a big one is right now we're going through the process of figuring out how do we get the rest of our people and HR team involved in talent management and other things. Like we're exploring that to this day to figure out what's going to work for Box, right? How can we use the same systems across so it's not so broken, I think, across different teams. So that's an experience, and we're still going through it. So yeah, I think a learning process for all. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. We loved hearing from you. It's been an exciting journey, and we're excited to continue on it with you.
Thanks for having us. And
Thank you, everyone. Thanks so much.